You all remember the story about this crazy cop that had Xanax in his system when he decided to pin this other driver in between his Ram truck and the other driver's back bumper because the other driver decided to call 911 after an accident. This guy went into a rage. Roar, my tattoos make me want to go crazy. Roar. Okay. Crazy knucklehead cop from Salt Lake City. Salt Lake City officer says he had a panic attack, accidentally crushed victim's leg. I panicked and had to crush his legs. The judge is getting ready to decide whether a former Salt Lake City police officer intentionally crushed someone's leg with his car in Ogden. If found guilty, Thomas Cagle could face up to 5 years in prison for aggravated assault. The incident began with a fender bender in 2022, but turned into a second crash when Cagle and the victim decided to move their cars out of traffic. At the time, Cagle was an officer with the Salt Lake City Police Department. He was off duty at the time of the crash. After the incident, Cagle was fired for violation of department policy. At first, the victim said he thought Cagle was drunk because he was slurring his words. The victim initially said he smelled alcohol on Cagle's breath and that he heard Cagle put the car into gear before ramming him, but he later withdrew those statements. That's interesting. Cargyle testified that he had chewing tobacco in his mouth and that he was going through a panic attack. When asked if any alcohol was found in Cagle's system, a forensic technician testified no, and that she couldn't determine from one drug test whether that person was absolutely impaired. However, blood tests did show that Cagle had Xanax in his system, which his doctor said was prescribed for generalized anxiety disorder and panic disorder. Ooh, Cagle, you need a new tattoo, don't you? You do. His prescription says he can take additional doses during an episode of panic. Oh, he's been a patient of mine for over a decade. Oh, my goodness. Well, I mean, I don't know much about medicine and stuff, but if you've been taking Xanax for a decade, I bet you're hooked on it, buddy. Dr. Mansfield also testified that some patients may slur their speech while going through panic attacks, especially when they're on Xanax. When officers arrived on the scene, Cagle failed his field sobriety test and was arrested. He was not given a preliminary breath test for alcohol because he was arrested for failing a sobriety test. Other cops said, hey, this guy's wasted. Prosecutor Sean Bryan is asking Judge Jason Nelson to believe the second crash was intentional. He says Cagle was angry after the first crash and retaliated against the victim when he called 911. And I would surmise that is the kind of activity that a guy like this would do because he's a cop with a sleeve tattoo and a Betty Crocker hairdo. Brian also said Cagle's explanation of the vehicle transmission getting jammed does not make sense. I tried to put it into reverse immediately, and it went into neutral. But it would not go into reverse, Cagle said. Lying cop, I say. The only option I had at that point was to push the brake as hard as I could to make sure it doesn't go forward anymore. You cannot get it from neutral into reverse, which is the next gear, or into park without physically grabbing the shifter and pulling it towards you and then up. And then imagine him doing all this stuff in court. What a knucklehead. Alex Van Zomeren, an expert witness who testified on car repairs, said it is not possible for a transmission to make a mistake and go into neutral rather than reverse. Yes. Although the trial was supposed to conclude Thursday, it has taken longer than expected. Both sides will return on Friday. Rather than seating a jury, both sides have asked Judge Nelson to make a ruling whether Cagle is guilty or not. Oh, Lordy. I hope this judge is not a complete knucklehead. But I can tell you what, this cop is a loser knucklehead, and if he has to go to jail, he'll probably still have access to his beloved Xanax, allegedly. Now, this is the story
On trial this week in a separate case. Right now, a judge is deciding whether the officer, who was off duty at the time, accidentally or intentionally hit a man with his car. Fox 13 News investigative reporter Adam Herbetz has been at the courthouse following every update in this trial.
Well, the trial is over, but we won't be getting a verdict until Monday morning. Of course, we've been hearing evidence on this case all week, but on the final day of testimony, the conversation shifted to Thomas Cagle's behavior in the courtroom. Prosecutors say he was quick to anger, that he lost his cool. Defense attorneys say he was calm in the courtroom and he was calm on the day of the crash, especially given the circumstances.
During the incident, were you thinking like a police officer?
No, I didn't have a badge on me. I didn't have a gun on me. I had no uniform. I was a regular citizen just like anyone else that day.
Former Officer Thomas Cagle says he was in the middle of a panic attack when he could not figure out how to get his car into reverse. The whole time, the victim's knee is getting crushed and his girlfriend is banging on the windshield. Prosecutors asked why he did not tell any of the investigators about the panic attack or his prescription for Xanax.
That's the officers' jobs to figure out when they get on scene all that information.
Okay.
I just gave the basics until the officers got on scene. And they didn't ask anything, so I didn't tell them anything. I ended up getting arrested, so that just added to the stress and the anxiety and everything else.
Not once you hear my client yell, scream, or act inappropriately towards anybody.
No, he just had his Dodge Ram truck pinning the guy's leg up against the guy's bumper. That's not inappropriate?
Look at how little it took on cross-examination here in court, in public, all of us on our best behavior, for the defendant to lose his temper and raise his voice. His memory conveniently disappears at key points in this story. It doesn't take much at all to escalate Thomas.
I wonder why. Could it be Xanax?
Cagle.
He was pissed with himself, Your Honor. He was pissed that he couldn't figure out what...
Ew, check out this liar. He's pissed, Your Honor. He's pissed.
What he did wrong.
I understand cases like this involve significant amounts of emotion, and everyone in the courtroom has conducted themselves very appropriately.
Oh, no, we know where this is going. Take one good look at this knucklehead. Ooh. Don't come after me, Judge. Ew. Oh, you goofballs.
And I appreciate that. It's not always the case.
The judge has asked both sides to return to this courtroom Monday morning at 8:15.
Oh, that's where we learn that Tattoo Boy gets... You're a bad boy, Tattoo Boy. Slap on the wrist for that jerk.